All right, folks. It's the 21st of December, 2024. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. This is In the Image Clothing Company music. This is Frank the guitar, beautiful little half-sized guitar. I love this guy. Yamaha CGS 102A. I love this thing. Frank, because it's short for Frankenstein. It's got a lot of adjustment stuff to it that is quite unique that I did, but it's great. The best guitar I've ever played. And what I want to talk about within this video here is chucking on a guitar. Okay, I think chucking is a very common thing you hear with ukuleles. Like if I were to play like sounds quite ukulele-ish, right? Chucking is that, like that. When you strum down and hit your palm and like, yeah, there we go. I'll do it without muting this side, right? It's just you're muting the strings. Now, chucking is something you're pretty well not going to be able to do if you don't have a radius within the saddle, the fretboard, and the nut. Okay, and I talk about that all the time. I will always talk about that. The hand is round. We need to accommodate for its rounding. And classical guitars generally come just completely flat, and it's so damaging to the hand. Okay, we need everything ideally even height from E to E. So this side is even height off the frets and off the saddle and off the nut as this side is. And you can see mine is pretty well there. It's actually, mine comes up just a tiny bit toward the high E side, but it's pretty well even. And I just made the radius within the saddle with just a file by myself. And so it's definitely not anywhere near like a perfect radius. But when you are chucking, like look at my hand here, right? The hand's curved. You're not going to be able to get a rounded hand to like chuck against a flat flat saddle, right? You see this? Like if I'm trying to chuck with the side of my hand here, I'm not going to do that against like a flat saddle, like the back of my hand's flat here, just because there's bones in there that are straight, right? But if I'm like here on like a rounded saddle, now I can just, oh, you can hear it. Yeah, that's great. It's like a really solid hit because there's that rounding to the hand and a rounding to the saddle. And now you can mute all the strings rather than here you can't. I mean, without completely changing the angle of your shoulder is the point. It's about the shoulder health, right? It's about the human body and allowing it to just do its thing. So otherwise you're not going to be able to play music is the point with the correlation of the guitar and the human body, okay? So, because you're just using your body to do the stuff that's coming out of the guitar. And so your body only does what it does and it's rounded. We got to have a rounded saddle and then you can chuck, okay? The thing is, you want to be able to mute all the strings. This is what I do when I chuck, okay? What you could do first, if you'd like to, I mean, you can finish this video out, but before you start to try to chuck, we have a video titled Full Nylon String Guitar Setup that I made where you can find in the Image Clothing Company music. And I went over everything. I used Frank here as the exemplar for the video. And I went over everything you'll need to do within a nylon string guitar to set it up to work for your body, right? So that we can just play, and then once we're done, set the guitar down, go throughout our life, and not have to like rehabilitate our bodies, okay? Now, when you're chucking, what I do, and the reason I kind of mentioned the setup video, other than that's, you know, we'll show you what you need, is the way that I string things, the way that I string guitars, is these three low strings here, I wind from this side, and then these three high strings here, I wind from the other side. Oh, right? When I'm wrapping, the string goes through the bridge block hole, and then it comes and wraps around, goes through the hole, and comes and wraps around. Okay, these three come from this side, these three come from this side, because that way the strings are pulling out. And the reason I say that is because if you're chucking and you're like using your pointer finger, which is very common for me to do, I'll be like, right? Using my pointer, what you want is for the strings to be pulling away and for the strings to be pulling away. So everything's pulling out from the center of the fretboard, and all that's described really well with in depth in the setup video that I referenced. You can go find. But yeah, because what's going to happen is your approach, you want to hit the strings and have them be pulling toward you, and you want to pull on the strings and having them be pulled away from you, so that they're opposing what you're doing. Because we want our pointer finger to be healthy. And when I'm chucking like this, I'm keeping my wrist pretty well in line, as neutral as I can get, right? Straight out from that pinky is the neutral wrist. And I'm trying to keep my wrist very neutral and have my pointer finger just go evenly in and out like this. You know, you don't want to be playing and have it like trying to use your pointer finger and you're feeling it all in like in your back right in here, you know, and it's all like binding up and pinching and it feels uncomfortable. No, it's about the setup. That's, you know, that's what I will always push more than anything within guitar. I don't, you know, you almost don't need to teach someone how to play guitar. Just give them something that's set up really well and say, hey, play what comes out. And, you know, that's how I've gotten to where I am now. I've never had a lesson. I just play, right? But that's only going to be allowed to happen if the instrument's set up well to accommodate for that. So, yeah, what I do when I'm chucking is you're going to hit like this. See the neutralness of my wrist, right? So much natural rotation in your arm straight out from the pinky, neutral, and you just kind of want to be like this. But now you're just using your pointer finger. Okay, so that's what I do. You can use all your fingers basically, or like your lower three and kind of like chuck, or your middle two, whatever you can do that's comfortable, but I'm going to show how I do it because, well, I mean, I do it pretty naturally. And so that's the goal, is just to allow the body to be natural when we play. So it kind of just looks like this. See how my arm just is neutral and my pointer finger is just going like this. Okay. And what's happening with my hand here is, like I was showing, you're hitting right about here on your hand, as far as like right in here. Okay. Across the saddle, just like kind of right up from the saddle. You're just muting all the strings. If you do it right on the saddle, you'll get this kind of like, so it's like half muted. Sounds really cool, but that's not going to fully mute it if that's what you're going for. So you can do that, and that's a whole different like sound. See that? It's like, but if you want to fully mute it, you just come right up from the saddle, pretty much just like you'd be strumming. I mean, you don't want to have to move anything from where you'd normally strum, because you could just be strumming and then just go straight into chucking. Okay, so you don't want to move your hand from the position it was already in when you're strumming, just because now you're doing stuff with your shoulder and, you know, doing adjustments you don't have to do. It takes extra thought, like while you're already playing, like you're part of the way into playing something that you've been strumming through, and then you like switch it up and start to chuck. You don't want to have to adjust your shoulder, your elbow, or even your wrist or anything. So just the spot you'd be strumming in already, and then you just chuck, right? Strum, chuck. Basically what's happening is you're strumming here, right? Nice and free, nice and neutral within everything. And then when you chuck, you're kind of just like setting your hand down. You don't want to have to adjust much of anything. So see how my shoulder stays the same, my elbow stays the same, my wrist stays the same, but you just kind of set your hand down. So it's just right above that saddle. Okay, so now you just do the same thing as if you're strumming and you're just going through chords. Okay, so it looks just like that. Anyway, there's chucking. I feel like chucking is something that's not the most common on guitars, because I think I'm going to mention a couple things of why it's not so common, at least that I would think about it being on guitars. is because if you have a classical guitar, which is nylon strings that you can chuck pretty like comfortably with, you almost always have a flat saddle and a flat fretboard, you know, flat frets, flat nut, and that's going to be really hard, as I was showing at the start of this. And then if you're playing anything that's not soft nylon strings, then it's going to kind of tear up your hand to try to be chucking on something else, you know, as far as like a different string type. So, I mean, you can do it, I've done it, but you know, it tears up your finger and your hand, because normally if you're playing something that's not nylon strings, you're probably using something else to touch the strings with rather than your own fingers. So yeah, chucking. I love it because, like I was showing with that, like you put it right on the saddle rather than muting like the full strings. And it gives it like a almost like a zing kind of sound is how I would describe it. So anyway, there's chucking. There's your how to chuck a guitar. The point that you want to focus on, the thing that you want to focus on is just no tension. Ideally, no tension. You don't want your elbow to start feeling it in the joint, and your wrist should ideally stay just as neutral as it's going to be when you're just strumming, right, or whatever you are doing, picking, you know. And then your shoulder, you don't want to have to adjust things. No tension, and then practice just like getting a solid hit to where they're all muting. But as long as your guitar is set up well, it'll just happen because your hand's naturally round, and so it'll just kind of go with the natural rounding that we have in our saddle, you know, after we set up our guitars correct, just to work for our bodies. So cool. There is your introduction to chucking a guitar. It's something that's really cool. You can mix in with stuff, like I was saying, you know, you're strumming through a song or even you're picking, and then you kind of transition into this like chuck. I'll stick with these minor chords, and I'll do a little bit of example of what I'm saying there, right? Like we've got an A minor, just a, that's an A minor, right? And you're just like, and you can do a lot of cool stuff like that. I mean, I'm doing an up strum, a hammer on, and then a chuck down. Like you can just, I think that's what's cool about chucking is it adds like it adds percussion into what you're playing, and it adds like a whole different dynamic. It makes it like, I don't know, it kind of like deepens the sound that's coming out of your guitar. It's like, whoa, what the, like there's more things happening, but it's still just one guitar. You can do a lot. Wow, with guitar, but chucking is something that really broadens what you'll be able to do. So yeah, okay, there's chucking. Thank you.